right, it's time to start. Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to the podcast. This is the Gen Z Christian podcast with your host, Pastor Paul. How are you guys doing? If you are there, say hello. If you're just coming in, well, I guess you're not hearing me yet, but you will hear me soon after you come in. As you can see today we're going to be covering a topic that wasn't necessarily requested, but some students have asked me this question. At least 2 or 3 different students over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks have asked this question. And so I wanted to be able to cover this. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. I need to switch something over, make sure that it's working. Okay, just give me 1 second. But anyway, how was your day, Justin, and anyone else? Until I get this thing. Okay. Okay, I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience. Just totally forgot to set up one last thing. Okay, there it is. Forgot to set up this, title thing down there. So there it is. There is the title for today. It's the question, why did God create us? You're sweaty from biking. Okay. Well, I hope you can cool down a little bit. I know it's not as hot today, so that's a good thing. So yeah, here's the question for today. And so I'm going to walk us through this. This might not last that long today. I'm thinking maybe like a 20-minute or so episode. So let's see how it goes. All right, so here's the question. Why did God create us? And I think the main reason that we ask this question, in short, is because of sin. We look at the brokenness in the world. We look at evil. We think about, is this really worth it, like, to God? Why did he really go through with this? Some of the students or people that I know that don't have maybe necessarily a big problem with this is because they think that God created us because he was lonely. And just in short, I need to make the point before we get into this today. It should become apparent and clear, but I just need to say it once more to reiterate. God wasn't lonely at all or lacking in anything before he created us. To say that God was lacking or lonely, it would entail, it would mean that God's not perfect. If God isn't perfect, then I would say he's not God at all. God, by definition, should be perfect. And if he's anything less than perfect, well, he's not God. Then he is just some kind of superior being compared to humans, but he is no God. And I would say that he is not worthy of worship. Okay. And so God wasn't lonely or lacking in anything. Before he created all of time in existence and all of creation, he wasn't lonely or lacking. He was completely satisfied in of himself. Okay. Now we have to get that, because if we don't get that, we somehow get some idea that God was lonely and that's why he created me and that's why I'm here. And if that's where you go with that, I think there's some really big holes in that theory. And if not, it being just very wrong. Okay. So let's walk through the actual reasons why God did create us according to his word. Okay. And we're going to start with the number one reason. Well, it's not really number one in order of importance, but just number one, because it's just the first one. Okay. So the first reason is we were created to be his image bearers. We were created to be his image bearers. And what that means is if we look over to Genesis 1:26, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.'" Okay. Now, just in short, we were created in the image of God to bear his image. That's just one of the reasons right there. It's not totally unlike when an artist creates a painting. Typically, I mean, hopefully, typically, I don't know, especially these days. Um, Typically, when an artist or a painter puts their brush to the canvas, they're not doing that for any other reason other than wanting to create, wanting to make something, right? Now, some of the other reasons why that could be actually, or like why they are painting, is because of money, because of fame, because of who knows what. But maybe just the purest answer it could possibly be, or the purest reason, is that people want to create. It's just a simple desire to create something and to express my creativity. And so when God created humans, humankind, Adam and Eve in the garden, he wanted to create beings that would be his image bearers, that would be like him to a degree and like him to a limit. And that's just simply the reason. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. Okay, let's keep going here. In verse 27, it says, "So God created man in His own image, in the image of God, He created them, male and female. He created them." And so both men and women, we were created in the image of God to be image bearers of God. Okay, number 2, we were created because it pleased Him to do so. And if I could pick one reason out of the 4 that I'm covering today that is the most important, this one would be it. We were created simply because it pleased Him to do so. In other words, we were created because it made God happy. That's just really it. And again, it's not we were created because God was unhappy and we're supposed to bring God happiness that He didn't already have. That's not the case. God was completely satisfied in Himself and by Himself without creation. He was perfectly content and perfectly satisfied. However, it just simply pleased Him to create a people who He could have a relationship with. And that's just it. It simply pleases God to be able to have a creation that would be in relationship with Him, that would be image bearers of Him. It simply brings Him pleasure because He chooses to be pleased by it. That's just as simple as we can make it. Let's look at Isaiah 43:7. It says, "Everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made." So everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made. It's very short, very simple. We were created for God's glory. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but God was not lacking in glory before He created us. I'm trying to think of an example of this. I just don't think that we have a very good one because God is unlike us. And so the way that He brings glory to Himself and the way that He gets pleasure and happiness is from a place of not needing it at all. Whereas as humans, well, we do need those things and we do crave those things and we do desire those things. But it may be in some very small way. It's like, okay, let's say like Jeff Bezos, okay? Now, Jeff Bezos, he is, I don't know if he's still the richest man in the world right now. It might be Elon Musk. Now it's like between him and Elon Musk and sometimes Warren Buffett, but I don't know if Warren Buffett's even in the top 3 anymore. But anyway, it would be like if Jeff Bezos made an extra $1 million today. I think he makes more than $1 million per day. I'm pretty sure it's got to be more than that. But let's just say if he makes another $1 million today, it's more money for him. It's a greater fortune that he now has, but he really doesn't need it like at all. Like he has no earthly need for an extra $1 million. Okay, in a small way, that is what it's like for God. And when it comes to His glory, He doesn't need more glory. He's already perfectly glorious as He is. But He created humans so that we would glorify Him, so that we would show and manifest and display His glory. Okay. In Isaiah 42:8, it says, "I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols." And this is all to say glory is to be given to God alone. And that's something not only does he demand, but he deserves, because he is the creator of all of this. He is your creator. He's my creator. He is the one who created your pet, or your school, or your friends, or the wind that blows through your hair, or the sun that shines upon us to give our earth nourishment, right? And so God is worthy of glory, and he alone is worthy of glory. In Isaiah 49:3, it says, "And he said to me, You are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified." And so God had every intention of being glorified when he created us. It's not as though he has to figure out or find out whether or not humans are going to glorify him. It's no, he knew we will bring him glory. Some of us, anyway, will bring him glory. And actually, maybe there's a case that we could say actually all of us bring God glory, even the evil people, just because we know that even the evil ones, God can use them for his purposes and still get glory, even through the evil people. Okay, now that's kind of almost a separate topic here. But just in short, humans, mankind, we are to glorify God, and that's why we were created. Okay, all right. So one more time to reiterate, we were created because it pleased him to do so. The first reason I went over was we were created to be his image bearers. And the third reason is that we were created to obey God. Now, glorifying God and obeying him really go hand in hand, and being his image bearers also goes hand in hand. But I just kind of wanted to give it its own reason, just so we can talk about it a little bit more. Just in short, though, Ecclesiastes 12:13 says, "The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." In short, we were created to do God's will. And to do needs to be stressed there, needs to be emphasized. We weren't just simply created so that we could just live and do as we want to do, or do as we see fit. No, we were created to do as God sees fit. And the thing that we have to get about this, and something, of course, I have to meditate on too, is that in glorifying God and obeying him, I am actually doing the very best thing for me, right? Somehow I think we get this idea of, well, if I glorify God, somehow I'm going to be held back from my true best life, or I'm going to sacrifice things that I'm going to really miss out on. And the reality is that couldn't be further from the truth. When you obey God and when I obey God, what we stand to gain is everything. We stand to gain everything in a life of abundance, a life of true joy, a life of true peace and happiness and gladness and perseverance and endurance, a life that is truly the very best life that we could possibly have, because we obey God. And so I can't stress that enough. Like we really want to put God in that role of dictator, or evil dictator rather, because to agree, yes, he is a dictator, but he's not an evil dictator. He's not one who is a hypocritical dictator. He's not one who's a tyrant. He loves us. And that kind of really goes into our next point here. This is technically reason number 4. I kind of got my numbers wrong here. But we were created to be his children and friends. And so if so far you're like, oh, all of this, I get it, but it's not very pleasant, I hope it would be pleasant to you, the fact that God created us because it pleases him, because we're to be his image bearers, and because we're to obey him. But if you need that extra assurance and encouragement, we were created to be his children and friends. This is reality here. In John 1:12-13, it says, "But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." And so to go back there, he gave the right to become children of God. And just in short, we have been adopted into a great and amazing family. We had been at once estranged from God. We were runaways. We were misfits. We were ones who had, like the prodigal son, taken our inheritance and really squandered it. And that really was our condition from the very beginning. So you might be wondering, well, when did I do that? Well, you did that from the very beginning, from the very moment that you were born. You have been sinful. You had been sinful. You were a sinner, and that was your identity before God came along to save you and offer you salvation and give you the opportunity to accept Him and believe in Him and follow Him. And so we were created to be His children, to be ones that He would love, to be ones that He would care for. And you could think, about what would that perfect father and child relationship be. That's the relationship that we can have and we do have with God. He is here to love us. He's here to discipline us. He's here to train us. He is here to walk with you. He understands you. He sympathizes with you. He's there to dust you off when you've fallen. He's there to bandage you up when you scrape your knee. He is there for you. He loves you. He adores you. And so we have to know that we are His children. And also, we are His friends. It says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. This one, if I'm being honest, always kind of catches me off guard. Yeah, and it also says in verse 14, I kind of skipped that. You are my friends if you do what I command you. It catches me off guard a bit, just because, yeah, I don't have as much of a hard time thinking about God as my Father and Jesus as my Savior. But I do have a bit of a hard time thinking of Jesus as my friend. And I think what we're supposed to understand about this concept of being Jesus' friend is that when he came, he walked among us. He is God with us, not just God among us, or God, well, I guess that's the same thing, or God above us. He is God with us, the God who dwells with us, the God who walks with us. He is with you in every situation of your life. The Bible says that Jesus is interceding for you. And I kind of like to think of that as a role of Him being our high priest, but also our friend, someone who would pray for you, just like your good friend should be praying for you. Jesus is praying for us. He's walking with us. He won't abandon you. He will never leave you. And I like to think of that as being in one of His roles in our life, being a good friend. Okay, we're coming down to the last and final reason, okay? He created us to demonstrate His grace through Jesus. Now think about this one for a second, okay? If God is who He is, if God is almighty and all-knowing, then what it stands to reason that God always knew He was going to send Jesus Christ. And therefore, that means also He always knew that man was going to fall and be sinful and wicked and evil, and man was going to be in need of a Savior. And so if God knew all of that, well, then it means this is one of His purposes. He always knew that we were going to need His grace, that He was going to demonstrate the free gift of grace through Jesus Christ. He was going to offer that to us, and that brings Him glory. And so that might take a little bit for you to ponder that one. That one is a bit of a paradigm shift, maybe, if you've never thought about it. Just that, wow, God knows all things, and so therefore, gaining glory through the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ was always a part of the plan to bring Himself glory. That's a great and marvelous reality. Okay. All right, so Ephesians 1, 5 through 6 says, He predestined us for adoption to Himself as sons through Jesus Christ, according to the purpose of His will, to the praise of His glorious grace, with which He has blessed us in the Beloved. Okay, and so He predestined us for adoption. He always knew, I'm going to go through with this plan. I'm going to adopt these ones as my children through Jesus Christ, who is going to be sent to die for our sins, who's going to be the mediator between the Father and us, right? So that was always part of the plan. God was always going to demonstrate his grace through Jesus. That was always one of his purposes in glorifying himself. It was always going to be this way from the very foundation of the world, before that, before we were even a thought, before God had even uttered a word to speak anything into creation. He knew he was going to send Jesus Christ, and so this has always been a part of the plan. Now, you might have some follow-up questions, and I hope that you would. If you do, please ask those questions. I don't want to supply those questions to you. There are questions that I think about when I'm thinking about this topic, but I want you to ask the questions that you have. So you can either ask them in the chat. There's only a couple people here, but you could always come back later, and I'll try to look at the chat, but probably a better place to put it would be in the comments. If you're going to watch this later, go ahead and put a question in the comment. I'll come back to it and I'll do my best to answer that question, either right there in the comments if I don't think I'm going to make a video about that, or as like a follow-up video of some sort. Okay? All right, so just one more time, I want to reiterate, just so you have it in a nutshell. Why did God create us? Number one, we were created to be his image bearers. We were created to display the character of God, the likeness of God. Although I would say it's a very small likeness compared to God, who is the original. That is one of the reasons why we were created. Okay. The second reason is that we were created because it pleased him to do so. It simply brings God pleasure to create us, to have created us. That's, I would say, out of the four, arguably the greatest reason. Number three, we were created to obey God. And number three, technically, I guess. No, it's number four. We were created to be his children and friends. And finally, he created us to demonstrate his grace through sending Jesus Christ. And that's it. I hope that answers the question for you. I hope this is a nice, succinct, treatment of this question. So if you ever forget, like, oh yeah, why is that again? You can come back to this video and watch through it. I also have a bunch of sources I could send you if anyone's interested, the sources I used to come up with this answer. But that is it for the official part of this episode. Cool. Okay. All right. So that's the end of the episode. Thanks for being here, Justin, and whoever our second listener was. I'm thinking maybe it's my wife or P. Ray. Thanks for the support, guys. And I would say, oh, oops. Let me turn that off real quick. There we go. I would say, yeah. What would I say? I would say, I hope your week is going well so far. It's important for us to just keep looking to the Lord in all that we're doing, to keep our eyes fixed on Christ, the author and perfecter of our faith, just remembering what it is that Jesus did for us and why that matters for all the little things in our life today. And so cool. Thanks for being here, Justin. And for you, if you're listening to this later, please go ahead and, as I said, drop a comment, drop a like so I know that you actually watched it, or don't do any of those things, and that's okay too, because I wouldn't know anyway. So yeah. Well, God bless you guys. I love you. See you soon. Peace.